Welcome, everybody, and apologies for having to be via Zoom. And if there is a note on the door of the town hall, and so if some member of the public comes in late wanting to speak at privilege of the floor, we'll just hold privilege of the floor later. But we will carry on with the rest of the meeting. Minutes from the December 9th meeting went out. And boy, it's been a while. Barbara, I can't remember, you may have said there was a mistake in them, which I then fixed and then sent out again. I don't really remember all the history, but how are we on the minutes for the December 9th meeting? We're ready to approve those.
Ready?
Okay, I will assume they are approved. Michelle, as you saw, I already gave the note to everybody about plans on the adult use law, but anything else from the town board side about planning or anything else that you want to apprise us of or questions you have for us?
No, I checked with Mark today to see, because I remember you were concerned that they checked with Guy Crow that it seems like it would be okay. He was going to send him an email, but he feels like he wondered if you had already checked with Guy about that.
Not about that in particular. I'd written Guy various questions we had, but not that particular question of if we don't do anything, does that put us in a tight spot eventually, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mark doesn't think it will, but he was going to follow up with an email, and I saw him today at about 11 o'clock, and he was going to do it, and I haven't talked to him since. So.
Okay, it's more the question of, if someone comes in and wants to put one in and knows they can't there, and then says, well, I broke ground over here because there's no way to comply with that. I just don't know what happens down the line. I agree. I think it's probably not a problem. Just in the sort of dotted I's, crossed T's framework, just wanted to make sure.
They shouldn't break ground without a building permit, right?
That is true. They need the building permit. So anyway, I just want to make sure we wouldn't get stuck someplace we didn't want to be. And I agree. Okay. I'm trying to figure out. I can reach up with my left and down with my right, but I can't do the opposite directions. I'm still trying to work this out.
Oh, yeah. God, I hope you didn't break anything.
No, I don't think so. It's just a lot of bruising, but we'll find out. All right.
So, Bill, just a question, given, we put in a fair amount of time with the adult use law, and, it turns out the town board, doesn't want that, essentially. So before we decide to move further on any other topic, should we have a couple things that we might do and then have Michelle run it past the town board before we actually spend a lot of energy?
I mean, I think that's an excellent point. What I'm about to do is give my thoughts on what we might be doing this year, all of which I think, except for one, have already sort of crossed that threshold from the town board. But on the adult use law, for example, that sort of was rump the flagpole. But until we got into it and realized there was this actually somewhat tricky issue, then we didn't realize. And I kept telling Mark, I'm going to write you guys a note to explain it. And I want to make sure we really knew everything. So yeah, we got another month or two down that road further than we probably should have. So that's an excellent point. And yes, I have the particular question about critical environmental areas in that regard. Because again, I agree. I don't want to spend time on things. But like I say, in that case, I think we didn't know that it was complicated. It looks simple on the outside. When I first looked at that law, I thought it would be done in one meeting. Which does bring us to the outlook. So, and yes, and Michelle, take all of this as something you can, get feedback from the rest of the town board if they think they have a different set of priorities. That's, we've been trying to ask all along. We started work on the mobile home law last year, and both Will and Barb have been busy with various things, so that didn't go real far. It was flagged by the zoning commission as needing some updating. We looked at it and agreed that it was kind of certainly out of step with the, where we went with the zoning law. And so, and also, was crafted way before there was zoning. So it seemed like a reasonable thing to update and make consistent with the zoning law. High priority, maybe not, because there's probably not about to be another mobile home park, but there could be. So at any rate, so that I think is something that we would likely, normally do this year, just because it was flagged as something that needed to be worked on. But again, like I say, Michelle, all of these things you can get us a little feedback on. The solar the solar law, the Ag Committee had some language. We'll talk more later about making it, I guess, more pro-agrivoltaics friendly. And as we discussed last year, that field has moved considerably since when that law was written, even just 4 years ago. And so it seems reasonable to revisit it. And also, they are reviewing a solar project. The review board is right now. And so it occurs to me that that might also be a good time to get feedback from them on, hey, how did this work? Should things be changed? So I think that likely the solar law is reasonable to work on this year. So that's one thing I see as possibly coming up. I have mentioned the flood damage prevention law. Didn't get to it last year. Again, something flagged, at least in some of the zoning commission discussions, because again, it's designed to protect buildings, not to protect water quality. And if we went that way, and I have talked this over with Mark, the consultant Nan Stolzenberg, who worked with zoning commission, would be consulted. She's sort of on a as needed basis with the town right now. She doesn't have, a lot of bandwidth to do a lot for us, but something like that where we said, hey, Nan, do you have sample language for us or a town law to look at? I think that's the sort of thing that she could bring up for us relatively easily. So I think that's a potential. Earlier, it came up in discussions with you, Michelle, that I guess there was the town of Ithaca folks were, or maybe the city of Ithaca folks were interacting with the board at a meeting, and the stormwater law, I think, is what came up as possibly also they wanting us to look at. I have that down as a question mark.
Okay.
And, again, that was definitely something before we waded into, I'd want to make sure the town board actually wanted us to take a look at that one.
Okay.
And the last item that I have on my, again, continuing list from past years is critical environmental areas. And so hopefully all of you took a little look at the DC website on that. And we'll talk more about that as to what it does and doesn't do and what it might entail in terms of public outreach and procedure. And that would be, Michelle, if we have a discussion, one thing I'd want to make sure that the board was on board with us doing, because I do acknowledge after the big fight over zoning, if that was seen as some other thing that might just be a big sore spot, then it may not be worth bringing up at this time. So we'll talk about that later in the meeting. So those are the things that I have been carrying forward roughly from last year. And in my prerogative as chair, I'm pointing those out there. But as last year too, take the month to think things over. And if any of you has another idea, program, doesn't have to be a law to revise. It can be, we should, do this kind of thing or start some program or, survey the town on topic X, bring that forward. But I'll give you the month to think about it. Unless you have something you want to say right now. Will looks like she does.
Maybe it would make sense to ask the Ag Committee if they would consider whether they feel the right to farm law needs any additional provisions.
Okay.
And that's partly based on that planning webinar with Jeff Kehoe, and he is available to help towns with their right to farming law.
Okay. I'm jotted that note down. We'll get to it later. I did send Erica Frenay a note a couple days ago. Haven't heard back from her, but obviously I would
Okay.
talk to her about that. Which reminds me, not for the next section, Will, because you'll be talking, but would you be willing to take some notes on the rest of the meeting after your presentation, just to help me in my when I read up minutes? It's sort of your turn if that works. Okay, you have been. Okay, great.
I have been. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think that does bring us to your your bit of the meeting. So Will attended a workshop on farmland protection and agricultural viability. So that was independent of the work that the Ag Committee was doing. This is a workshop held by, I assume, the Department of State, but I'm not really sure. Will can let us know. And I just asked if she would give us a 5 or 10 minute sort of summary of key points and things she learned at that.
Yeah, so Jeff Keogh was the major presenter, and is everyone familiar with who he is, or is
I am not.
okay? So he was actively part of us getting the grant for writing the ag protection plan, and in part of reviewing it at the state level, and was available during the process to answer some of our questions about developing the plan.
Yeah, and
So
his position is with.
ag and markets,
Okay.
he's ostensibly he manages the ag district program, but with agriculture, they make a big effort to integrate it with across several areas. So like he sits on the advisory board for the state level committee for soil and for water and soil conservation,
Okay.
for instance.
But his main position is ag and markets. Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, give us the top handful of pointers from the session.
Okay, so given his position, he went over a lot of issues that people saw already during the time when we were developing the zoning law. So that would be review for most of us. I'm not sure, Adam, how much of that you would have seen, but just things like uh, is a greenhouse the same thing as a nursery? Stuff like that. Um, he really emphasized that, and this is almost a quote from him, that he wishes that municipal leaders have a desire to, no, sorry, let me start again. Municipal leaders may have a desire to protect residential values, but he'd like to see people think about the value of locally grown food and a working landscape. So that I would say he said that many times in many different ways, and that's his view on planning overall. Not surprisingly, then he really recommends highly that within ag districts, towns give permissions and that the laws be streamlined, because otherwise it just adds to the cost of trying to keep a farm going. And, especially in a town like Caroline, most of the farms are sort of on the edge anyway. And yeah,
What permissions for what?
just in general, like not to make it hard for farms to get permits
For
uh,
what?
for practices that help the operation of the farm. He
I
was,
mean, are there any in the currently do farmers have to get permits for?
yeah, okay, so one of the distinctions he made was he was emphasizing that restrictions as a landowner are not the same as restrictions as a farmer. And what NISDAM or Ag and Markets supports is farm operation, but not necessarily processing. So you have to realize Ag and Markets is totally geared to are you in an ag district? And then there's, considerations for people who are starting a farm, who aren't necessarily already farming in an established ag district. Sorry. But a lot of the protections are aimed at, are you in an ag district, number one, and are you an operating farm?
Yeah, and I believe again in the town ag committee report makes this clear that you have to have over $10,000 of sales, I think, to qualify as an operating farm for a lot of those protections to kick in, correct?
I mean, you have
Uh-oh.
pickup
Okay. In terms of
later,
all
okay?
right. All right. We'll go back to that. I will say, and just you can nod yes or no. When you say processing, I do know that there's more stringent requirements in permitting for, say, cutting up meat, like a butcher house. Is that the sort of processing you mean, as opposed to the actual like farming practices of how you raise, say, the beef? Is it when you say there's the processing can often be an issue? Did you mean actually like the processing of the product on premises? Just
They
shake.
make
Okay. All
they
right.
make
We'll get to that.
different.
All right. Let's get to that later then when you can talk. Okay. All right. All right. To be continued. Sorry about that, Will. Okay. So then we're going to flip back to finishing up what we were working on last year with the adult use law. And so we were working the definitions and came up with this plan to sort of streamline them a bit and combine from various sources. And Barb was and did write the little piece about sort of adult theater, and that all got sent out to you guys some time ago, earlier in the month. And I hope you had a chance to review it and take a look at it. I can pop it up on share screen if we want. But did anyone flag anything that they thought warranted some discussion here by the committee on those definitions? Again, at this point, we're going to sort of set it aside for somebody someday to hopefully take a look at. All right, so I'm going to assume, therefore, that we are all happy with what we came up with, and I actually think they are. That's it. I think it is good. So I'm happy. That's for sure. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the a couple what I call first looks. One is the solar law and the ag committee report. And briefly, as we've mentioned in the past, the town's agricultural committee produced their report on helping preserve farms and farming and farmland in the town. And in the renewable energy section, they wrote specifically, the town should encourage any solar operations to incorporate compatible agricultural uses into new solar development. And they use the phrase agrivoltaics as that. And they say most commonly agrivoltaics involves high value fruit, vegetables, or flower production in the rows between the solar panels. Beekeeping is another suitable enterprise when paired with horticultural crop production. The other use is for grazing sheep on grassy pastures seated under and in rows between panels. Okay, got it. And the question would be how to implement that. And the solar law does really look at this a little bit. Jonathan Comstock in particular, and some of the language in there about movable fences and other stuff has to do with being able to use sheep to graze under and around the panels. But there's nothing else that sort of specifically tries to encourage either in row spacing, row height, or anything else, making it compatible with agricultural production. I wrote a note to Erica and said, great. Basically, what role do you guys want to play in this? Do you have the wherewithal to just basically write something and have us take a look at it and talk it over with you? Or do you want to tell us a few parameters that we then write language for? or do you just want to point us to some things to read? And I haven't heard back yet. So I guess
So-
go ahead. I'm done.
Yeah,
That's my
so
spiel.
I'll try to say something really fast before my voice runs out again. So there was a website, and this is discontinuous with where I started coughing, but there's a website that was recommended for it's they call it the ATWG, ATWG. And I believe it's at atwg.com. It's an agriculture technical ag tech working group. And they've put out, you can get on their mailing list and be notified of new activities they're doing. They have regular meetings. They put out a whole set of guidelines, which I had no idea about till I followed up after the webinar. And they mostly appear to be from the viewpoint of either the state deciding, like in a competitive environment, who should get permitted.
That's fine. Why? Sorry about that. My internet got bumped off, and now I'm back. So, all right. So, well, that gave me how. So we were talking about the solar law, and as it turns out, though you were talking about the Ag Tech Working Group. So they have info, you think, on agrivoltaics? Okay.
Yeah, and Barbara gave out the correct and full URL.
Yeah, I
Okay.
put it in the chat, Bill. I don't know if you can still
Yeah,
access.
I don't
So let
think
me
so.
put it in there again so you can get
Maybe I
it. There
can.
it is.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, when I was out there checking my internet, Erica had emailed me late in the day today, and her proposal is that we work with. She said Caleb Scott, who's a local town resident. Many of you probably know him. He works in this area a lot, and thought that maybe he could work with us. And he's been on the ag committee, I think. So that was her suggestion. And in the past, Barb has certainly mentioned the Cornell, because I think they've been doing some research in that area. So those are all resources. But I will admit, I was kind of hoping someone would do more of the grunt work on language. But all right, so we'll get there.
Maybe we want to just touch base with Tony Tavelli if he'll talk to us, because it'd be interesting to hear what his experience has been so far, because it's possible we've, put something in the law that makes it harder from his vantage point, and, he might
Yeah.
have a good point.
Sure.
Who is he? What does he
Who's
do?
Oh.
Tony? It's partly his property, where the community solar farm is
Yeah.
was it approved yet?
So yeah,
I-
no, it's the review board's working on it. Tony has at least much of the land on which the proposed solar facility is going to be located. He certainly has been very involved with the company, in terms of interacting with the company. I think it's sort of, Tony's, the company's doing it, but he's the primary landowner they've been talking to. And so I think, yeah, I think it would be good to get the review board's perspective. And from the other side, either Tony or the developer could give us their perspective on how it was to go through the process, as we review the law. And then on go ahead.
And there's a hearing on it on Thursday, public hearing on that project
There's a hearing on the project?
on Thursday, yeah,
So,
public hearing.
okay.
In case you're interested.
Well, yeah, and I've been trying to not pay attention to the details of what's going on. But I didn't know where they were in their review of it. I've had some interactions with a committee member too, as they look at info, and I'm just surprised they're at the hearing stage.
Yeah, so it's the 23rd at
Yeah.
7.
Okay. And are there
Yeah,
two?
so I guess just a question that I have is, when in the process is it appropriate to talk, for planning board to talk with Tony? So it doesn't seem like we're trying to go around the review board or we're
Oh.
trying to muck up, so just be aware of that politically.
Yeah, and I would do it after the project has been approved and they're building it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm
Well,
thinking less of the,
Yeah, that could be a couple years out.
yeah, it could
Well,
be.
it seems like it's close to approval then if they're having the hearing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
Well,
check.
I kind of want to take it that if you haven't gotten questions, Bill, that, as head of the planning board, that means we didn't create too many fuzzy places where people needed to hear from us.
Well, good. Yeah, we'll take it that way. It's more, again, yes, I think that's good. If it's unclear, that's not good for them. And also then just, is there a way to, what more did they need or what was too much that they didn't need and that sort of stuff too. And then the agrivoltaic. So those are all the, I think, areas of solar law to look at. So
Well, I can tell you that when we look at it, the solar law in more detail, one of the pieces that I will have a lot of questions about is Georgia's inclusion of us of the 110% of farm use provision. And I know that's a standard, but I see that as a problematic kind of provision that, it may be there in a lot of the regulations, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we want to just whole hog put it into our law in any form.
okay, as they say, put a pin in that and we'll come back to it when we look at the law. That sounds good. Okay. Did you guys talk more about the workshop that Will went to while I was absent?
No.
Okay, all right. So Will, do you want to finish telling us what you want to tell us about that workshop, and then we'll move on to our last major item, which is the CEA issue.
Yeah. So, so what I was trying to get to is that a lot of regulations are tied to, are you already an exempt farm, in terms of land use, and are you already in an ag district? But please be aware that the ag committee specifically was trying to make the definition of agriculture more inclusive than that and more expansive than that, because there's a recognition that in terms of farmland, most of the land in Carolina is kind of marginal. It's mostly suited for hay crops. And during our discussions, the point was made that most of the best market for hay right now is for people with horses. That they're sort of pushing all the other hay consumers out of the market because they pay higher prices. So, it's a kind of reality. I don't know how you what you do with that information in terms of the law. But on the other hand, nobody really asked the question, well, how many of our working farms right now are not exempt? Because a lot of times they didn't have a reason to apply for it. It was only as taxes got higher that it became more attractive.
Right now, getting the ag exemption helps.
Yeah, and also there's a recognition that the markets are changing. you know, where your food is actually gonna go isn't necessarily where you think it's going.
So, and I did read the town's ag report. I saw that about, hay and horses and no dairy farms left basically. But specifically from the workshop that you went to in December, is there anything else in terms of general principles of farmland protection that you think we
Yeah.
should be aware of? And then we'll move on to our last item.
Yeah, and this is to follow up with where Michelle was going. The question of production and operation. There's Ag Markets makes a very clear distinction that there's a difference between if you produced the farm product and you as the producer want to do some added value operation that would qualify as processing, you're in a different category than someone on a rural piece of land who did not produce that product and wants to process it. Even if you're a farmer, and you want to process it, the question is still, did you produce it?
So
And
are the
that's a big
regulations
question.
more lenient? If the farmer produced the product, are you saying it's a more streamlined and easy process than if a farmer didn't produce the product or a non-farmer? Either one of them is trying to deal with the commodity.
It's not a matter of streamlining, it's a matter of, do you qualify for protection by the state?
Okay.
Or are you strictly subject to local zoning? Because the state will decide if your zoning law is restrictive.
Okay. So
Is that like a right to farm? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's different than right to farm.
Yeah. So yeah, right to farm is one thing, which is, farms make noise and smells and whatever. And if you're moving in here, you don't really have a right to complain and try to boot them out. Very quick summary of the right to farm law. I think what Will's talking about, I'm jumping in because clearly we're having another vocal issue, is that if you want to qualify to get some of the tax breaks and other financial benefits, if you're the farmer producing the product and do value added to it, that helps, you qualify. But if you are a farmer farming corn and you want to do something with somebody else's product, maybe try to meet your $10,000 total, whatever, that doesn't help you. So if you didn't make the product, or then you can't qualify for the ag exemption, what it sounds like, or some of those financial incentives. I'm sure I have the details wrong, but in that ballpark.
It's in that ballpark, but the commissioner of agriculture has final say over whether, or a final determination of whether a zoning law applies to a farmer or not. And they have a whole set of criteria and precedents for that.
Okay. Great. Moving on then to critical environmental areas. I had you guys take a look at the website from the DEC standpoint, and I found that fact sheet that somebody in the Hudson Valley produced was very helpful and very useful. So this idea has been floating around probably for 5 or 10 years now that Caroline should designate some areas as critical environmental areas. And as you now all know, that is a state designation. There's a process for going through that involves, having a written statement that states what the resource or area is, a map delineating that area, a hearing, a public hearing for the public to comment on whether they, want or not want that to be a critical environmental area, and finally a vote by the governing body of the municipality. So just essentially like adopting a law. As it stated, the intent of a critical environmental area is just basically to alert someone doing an activity that triggers seeker that there is this resource there that might be important because it's culturally important, environmentally important, critical to water quality, water supply, what have you. You know, there's the little list there at the top of the general areas. And as the fact sheet noted, and we came up in our discussions once last year, if you're building a single family home, that doesn't trigger seeker. So these regulations will be triggered by any project going through review in our town that otherwise requires seeker. Because I think anything the review board is reviewing in general requires at least some level of seeker, if I'm remembering right. But not if it happened to be on your property, you wanted to build a house, that's not gonna, there's nothing more different you have to do. And I bring that up because of threading this needle of, oh my God, here's the town trying to restrict yet more development. It is not so much that, it is a mitigation strategy. So that if someone's gonna build something like, say, a store, and it's right next to, say, that nice water supply by the town hall, that they should make sure they don't interfere with that if we designate it as critical. So it's that sort of idea. And I'm willing to concede that we may decide there are no areas in Caroline that are worthy of a state designation as a critical environmental area, but I think it is a question worth asking. And so my question is, I have some ideas of how one might go about trying to figure out if there are such places, but that's what I think the proposal to the committee is how would we look at this? What should our process be? Sources for us to look at for information, but also how we reach out to the public on this. So I wanted to have just a 5 or 10 minute sort of overall discussion of if we go down this road, what we actually do sort of step by step on the road. Anybody?
Aren't streams already protected, like 6 Mile Creek or any of the other streams?
Streams are protected, and yes, and wetlands are protected. Some of it has to do with level or area who's protecting. So streams are protected through our zoning plan, as well as certain regulations by DEC about the actual bed of the stream and that sort of thing. Wetlands, of course, are protected by either the federal government or the DEC, depending. These might be things that aren't so protected. So, for example, sometimes some places it's a gorgeous view shed, but other places it's indeed a set of rare or plants. Other times this is the water source for our town, and we want to define an area around that where anything going in has to be careful about what they do so they don't interfere with the water source for the town. So a lot of them, if you saw on that list, a lot of them had to do with protecting either recharge areas or something like that. Like for Cortland, it's their sole source aquifer they want protected. So there's a whole slew of things. So yes, I think this would be something worthy of protection that we did not feel attention would be paid to, adequate attention would not otherwise be paid attention to. I think that our zoning law probably makes enough attention to go towards streams. It would be something, again, like, again, one thing that's probably means, that artesian well by the town hall, that's not a stream. I don't know of anything in the zoning law protects that. And I know in the past, one time road work interrupted that flow until they repaired some breach in the whatever it was that's feeding that. So would we want that? I don't know. But maybe that could be a critical environmental area. What about some of the state land?
American or Native American burial ground? Isn't there a major site in Caroline?
I do not know. That's the sort of thing, is there's a lot I don't know.
So can I say something about that particular thing? From what I've
Michelle and then Barb.
I'm sorry. Okay. From what I've heard is the landowner doesn't want it identified because he doesn't want to be. So it's not really identified. I'm not sure people know where it is. There's a sign, on Ellis Hollow Road, but I don't think people, and I've heard, but so this is all that he doesn't want it identified. So I don't know if you can go against what a landowner wants, or you know what I mean? Just as about that particular thing.
Yeah. So Barb will help my memory. In the zoning law, of course, archaeological things may be protected, but that's again in something going through review by the review board. So if this landowner decided to build a Walmart, then that resource has to be identified. But you're right, if he's just, or her, just living on their land, got a single family home, not doing anything else, there's nothing that requires that to be identified, mapped, or whatever. If we knew about it and wanted to be protected in the future, that falls in an interesting area about whether we could make sure that it got delineated over the landowner's wishes.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. Just thinking about, you know, who we might consult with, or, you know, where we might find information about this. So, you know, one, I mean, to that point would be to consult with the American Indian and Indigenous communities, you know, program at Cornell, to see if they have any information about, you know, Native American cultural sites that might, you know, might merit a look in Caroline. Another would be to consult with, you know, either consult with or look at the resources available through the county's Environmental Management Council. You know, they have a list of unique natural areas. They have a planning advisory board as well related to the county. So, you know, they might be able to point us in you know, in the right direction, you know, to resources in addition to what we could find, you know, just looking on the website. I'm trying to think, you know, what is there's some sort of historical society or whatever in the county, you know, trying to look at organizations that exist that we can consult with and say, hey, you know, any idea if there's anything in Caroline we should be looking into more?
Okay, I've got those written down. Yeah, there are, so the county has this unique natural areas designation, which carries no protection or anything. And Caroline does have a dozen or 14 or something of them. And so that was on my radar as something we should at least take a look at or look through. And I think that the town hall has the whole set. I mean, like, it's hard to find information on them, but the town hall has this massive binder, I think, that has information on them that I saw once. And in that same vein, Bob Wesley is a noted local botanist who did a lot of the work to help establish those UNAs. And I would probably suggest we reach out to him and say, hey, are there, like, I like off of Beaver Creek Road, the Mid-All Woods, as they call it, it's partial old growth. Is it enough of a patch that's worth saving? You know, or Bob, is that marsh over there in Wilseyville Creek, does that have enough rare plants that we should designate that? Because that's certainly not something I would know. And I don't know if the Native Plant Society, also active in the county, would know anything. I mean, toxic sites can be identified also, but I don't think we have any of those in Caroline.
I don't know.
All right. So that's a good starter for thinking about that. I think that, you know, the other question is it, at some point, the public should be approached and engaged. And one question is, does it happen now that we throw something out as either a survey or an information meeting saying, hey, do you all have thoughts of special and unique areas in Caroline that you think might merit special consideration? You know, you have to say other words than in the seeker process, but would this very, very initial stage be the right time? I think certainly somewhere down the road, there's a public information meeting saying, here's some of the ones we're thinking about. But I'm always very concerned about getting the public involved early enough they don't feel they're coming in after all the decisions are made.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, I don't think doing a survey is the way to go. I mean, this is not, you know, this is not a, you know, kind of issue that's top of mind and, you know, so you know, important and critical to you know, many town residents that you get any kind of, you know, response rate to a survey, you know, for the effort you put out for it. But I think it would certainly be worthwhile, like in in Mark's, what does he do? A quarterly newsletter or something to the town, to have a little paragraph in there about, what a critical environmental area is, and the planning board is looking into this. And so if you have any ideas or suggestions, get in touch with the planning board, so that if somebody is interested, they can, send information our way. But I don't think we could construct a feasible survey that would produce anything useful, frankly. Spoken as a retired social scientist in conservation social sciences. So.
Well, I mean, well put, excellent put. I mean, so to speak, my mind that it takes expertise to know that this is something that is worthy of protecting, and it's not. I think it's Richard Feynman who said, you can survey 100 idiots. That opinion doesn't make that opinion right. You do want source of information. Okay, so George France just got into the meeting here, and so I'm letting him connect. Maybe he saw our agenda, or I don't know, Will, if you messaged him or. At any rate, so yeah, I thought that an overall survey was not necessarily a great idea, but I did want to involve the public sooner rather than later. I think
it's a great idea to to put something out, but something that has the ability to to reach many people in the town, but will catch the interest of somebody who really cares about this, and give them the opportunity to to contact us and weigh in with whatever perspective or information sources they have.
Well, the Caroline History Association, they would probably have some ideas, and they've certainly done their homework.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna George, I don't know if you can hear us. You're currently muted, and I don't have any video for you. Let me see if there's. There we go. So give us 1 second to finish the discussion we were having, then I'll ask what you're up to here. So so I think down the road, if we again decide to explore CEAs, there would be some public outreach to discuss that it was happening. So it's not one of those last minute, oh my God, this is happening sort of things. Right. And eventually a public hearing because it's required by state law, and eventually a vote by the board. Michelle, what I want you to do is go to the board now and say, the planning board is thinking about this. Make sure it's clear, what a CEA is, which is, again, it doesn't say you can't develop there. It says that if a project has to do seeker, that they have to say how they're going to address protection of that critical resource in their seeker process, in their seeker answers or whatever. And again, in the backdrop of, we just went through the zoning, et cetera, is this still too raw a time to do that? Or is that worthy of our work this year?
So, we don't meet again until February.
Until end of February, right? So you have plenty of time to.
First week of February 5th or something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
So, all right.
Wednesday in February.
All right. So, George, I'm asking you to unmute. I hope that means you are going to be able to. Yeah, let's see.
I am muted.
Okay. Yeah. Now you're unmuted. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So, welcome. Is there something you wanted to talk to the planning board about?
No, actually, and first I apologize for being late, but I just thought I'm here at my office working, and if the board has any questions on the ag plan that I might be able to answer, I'm here to answer it. But otherwise, I just be in the background listening.
Okay. Well, you're mostly going to hear us discuss what we're going to do next and close the meeting because we're winding down here.
Okay.
And what I will say is I just wrote to Erica the other day and said, because at this meeting, we were only talking about the interface of the ag law, the ag committee's recommendation about putting stronger things about agrivoltaics in the town solar law. But in general, I do think it's worth the planning board being apprised of sort of all the basics, principles, et cetera, findings of the Ag Committee report. And I asked Erica, would she be willing to sort of come and talk to us about that? And tentatively, she's on the agenda for March. And the two of you can tag
Okay.
team on that as you wish, or not. But since we do have you here, so in terms of working on changes to the solar law to make it more sort of ag friendly, and you know what was in there in terms of requirements to meet New York State Department of Ag and Markets guidelines for preserving soil, et cetera, and the escrows for redoing the land afterwards and everything else. What there isn't a lot is any requirements that you have the panels situated in a way that makes agriculture more possible or feasible. And I know that's part of what maybe you guys were getting at. In terms of resources on that, Will just talked about a site which I have now, of course, don't have up here, the agricultural technical something or other. And we know that Cornell has been doing some research, and Erica suggested Caleb Scott might have some expertise. Would you have some expertise to offer us when we try to actually draft language that is more agrivoltaically strong, or do you have resources to point us to?
Well, actually, if and again, I don't have it before me. I could certainly look at what I wrote, my recommendations, and see if there's any possibly ways to make it stronger with regard to protecting agricultural land. But it's going to be difficult. And one of the things I've been very sensitive to is, again, all the debate and the controversy over the zoning code. And so I can look into it and, respond to that question. Is there anything stronger that the town could do?
Okay, yeah. Any specific recommendations? Because if we're going to get to the point, which we will later this year, of looking at the law and perhaps trying to add or change language, the more specific someone like you can be, the easier and better it is for us, because we are doing, the right thing as opposed to trying to dream something up on our own and it being the wrong thing.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. And again, what I did as part of the ag plan was I looked at the zoning code, but only with regard to how it might impact agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also the same thing with solar. And so it was a pretty limited scope in terms of what I reviewed with the zoning code. The ag plan, the idea is that it look at the zoning and how it may impact agriculture, primarily in negative ways and in contravention of the ag and markets law. Okay. And, I'm happy to say that Caroline was pretty well crafted. Compared to, I have probably reviewed 30 or 40 zoning codes across upstate in the last 10 years as part of ag and farmland protection plans. And Caroline did a very good, and I think thoughtful job in terms of, its zoning and, again, the solar law.
Okay.
But
well, that it's obviously very good and nice to hear. And I think part of that thanks goes to Nan Stolzenberg, who is our consultant. Heard loud and clear, I think, from us and others in the town that we wanted something that was supportive of agriculture. And it wasn't, again, she said there are zoning codes that mandate, 100-acre minimum lot sizes to avoid farms being broken. We're not there. She said it's ag friendly. It's not like, so anyway, that was what our intent was. I'm glad to hear that came mostly through. But we'll take again, with your help, a good hard look at the solar law. Does anybody else on the planning board have any questions for George as long as he's here? Will.
I will.
In the appendix, it says maximum height 15 feet for structures, and we went with 20 feet. Off the top of my head, I can't remember why. We had a short discussion on it. But what is the 15 feet based on? Or what is it protecting? Anything?
The 15 feet has been very common. I think the idea is that lower solar panels are less obtrusive in the environment, but that number also has been around since before things like agrivoltaics were being discussed. Okay, and so you can't do a whole lot in terms of agrivoltaics with when your solar panels are limited to 15 feet in height. 20 feet, well, gives more the possibility of more clearance under the panels. So, and again, but it's the concern with that is I have no problems with 20 feet. But some people do have problems because of visual impact. But you can also screen them fairly easily. So.
Right. So there's a trade-off between trying to enable the height for tractors underneath or whatever grazing animals and then the visual appearance of these tall structures on the landscape.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and of course I'll look at the law and just look at it in terms of what you guys are doing right now. It's not really part of the ag plan, but it's sort of part of my it's quasi extension, informal extension work that I do.
Okay. Well, if you're anything, it's likely to be this summer or late summer when we take up the solar law to try to make some changes so you got some time for one thing. But anything either that you can tell us or resources to point us towards to help us understand what are the principles and things you change to make it more friendly for agrivoltaics, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay. Just making a note. Okay, then, and then again, in March, you'll be discussing the ag plan, and I'll just put that on my calendar.
Great.
To answer questions and the like.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, I'll leave you and Erica to negotiate and arm wrestle over that one, but that would be great to have you on board too.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Anybody else?
Question?
Okay, great. Well, thanks for tuning in, George. We're going to just wrap up our meeting.
You're welcome. Okay, have a good evening, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so in terms of what we do next, Barb and Will, do you think in this next month you'll have some time to dredge up again that mobile home law and bring some stuff forward for us to think about, talk about, work on at the end of February? Maybe, possibly.
Have some time to think about it again. I don't know how much we'll have by the end of February, but something, right? Will?
I just feel like I'm so undependable. I mean, like last Monday I went to all my appointments, and the next thing I know, they're going, get in a cab and go to the urgent care. And I get there, and an hour later I'm in a hospital bed overnight. And it's like, well, where did that come from? I feel fine. So they have their little machines that tell them what to tell me what to do, but we don't know, ahead of time. So I would like to say yes.
All right. Well, this started as your guys sort of think we were dividing up to conquer a few different objects, but hey, it doesn't have to be that way, particularly, Will, if you're going to still be potentially time stressed in the next month, and maybe one of the rest others should help you out. So let me know soon, and maybe say you know, I or Adam or somebody can take a look at it too. Again, it's
Well,
not,
right now it looks good.
okay, glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. And just looking stuff over here. What I will do is right away try to get with Mark and say, hey, let's ask Nan about the flood damage law and get some advice there. Looks like we should definitely wait on the solar law till a little bit more cooks in the local project. And that might be a reasonable start. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
If that's the case, then I'll help out with that mobile home law then.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So why don't you get together with Will and Barb? You guys can take a look to see how you want to do. Again, just highlight whatever it is we need to discuss as a committee. And if I have any extra time, I will start marshaling info on any unique natural areas that deserve protection in Caroline. So, okay. All right. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, February 26th. Is that good?
I will be out of town, but I could Zoom in.
Okay. I'm also okay moving it a week earlier if the town calendar permits and if your calendar permits, Barb, either way. Or we could do
19th is open for me.
It would probably be better for me.
19th be better for you? Okay, Will, does that seem to work for you?
I'm figuring that out. Uh, yes, either 19th or, yeah, the 19th of February is
Yeah.
good. That's better than the 26th.
Okay, well,
Because I have to be in Ithaca for the 20th, so I'll
Okay.
just come a day early.
all right. Well, great. I guess it works better. And Michelle, I don't know if you can make it. Hope you can.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Seems-
great. So we'll plan on the 19th of February. And maybe that'll be our new third
Wait.
week.
Wait,
What? Yeah, is there?
isn't that
You need to
the
check the town.
Wednesday, right? Isn't that a town board meeting night?
Well, it could be. That's why I think we wound up in the fourth one anyway.
It's the first and the third Wednesday of the month. is
Okay.
town-
All right. So that would be the town board meeting. So then we can,
Yeah.
is either the Tuesday or Thursday. You said, Will, you have to be in town the 20th anyway?
Tuesday or Thursday would work okay for me.
And I'm just waiting for confirmation from Will. Barb, how's your schedule look?
Tuesday would be preferable, but I could do Thursday if needed.
Yeah, and those days work for me.
Okay. And so it's really comes down to you, Will, because I know
Either
you'd
one.
be willing to come as early as the 18th. Because that's better for Barb. We'll go to the 18th, but I know the 20th is probably better for you. So it's like,
Yeah, but
That's-
right now it looks like I can be flexible, so let's
Okay.
do that.
all right, let's plan on the 18th of February then. Unless there's anything else on the town calendar that day.
Okay.
Seem okay? All right. Okay. Well, that sounds great. And then we'll see you guys in about 3 weeks.